The meeting hall floated in space, far from any planet. Inside, alien beings from across the galaxy sat in their chairs. Some had scales, others had fur. A few glowed with strange light. They were the Galactic Council, and they ruled most of the known universe. Commander Lee Bora stood at the center of the hall. She wore her Earth military uniform with pride. Behind her, 3 other humans waited nervously. They had come to ask the Council one simple question. Could Earth join the galactic community? High Counselor Vexthar looked down at the humans. His 6 eyes blinked slowly. He was tall, with blue skin and a voice that echoed through the chamber. When he spoke, it sounded like he was speaking to children. Vexthar said that humans wanted to join the Council. He asked why they should accept such a primitive species. Bora kept her voice steady. She had prepared for this. She explained that Earth has much to offer. They have advanced technology, art, music, and culture. They have survived wars and diseases. They have learned to work together. Several council members laughed. The sound was not kind. Another counselor spoke up. He said human technology was not advanced at all. Their fastest ships take months to cross their own solar system. Council ships do it in minutes. Vexthar raised one long hand. The chamber grew quiet. He tapped on a screen in front of him. Numbers appeared in the air above the humans. Vexthar said he had reviewed the planet's data. It was very interesting. The data showed that 20% of the human population is over 60 years old. He asked if this was correct. Bora nodded. Yes, she said. Humans care for their elderly. They have wisdom and experience. The chamber erupted in laughter. It was not just a few aliens now. Most of them were laughing. Some slapped their armrests. Others made clicking sounds that might have been their version of laughter. Vexthar held up his hand again. He asked if humans really kept the old, the weak, and those who cannot work. He shook his head. This explained so much, he said. Humans were not just primitive. They were foolish. They wasted resources on those who give nothing back. Bora felt her face grow hot. She wanted to shout at them, but she had orders. Earth needed this alliance. She had to stay calm. She said quietly that their elderly are not useless. They teach. They guide. They remember what others might forget. Vexthar said flatly that the elderly only consume. They take medicine. They require care. They slow the species down. He leaned forward. He asked how many of these old people fight in human wars. Bora answered that they fought when they were younger. They earned their rest. One counselor, smaller than the others, stood up. She had silver skin and kind eyes. Her name was Ambassador Kilnara. Kilnara said they should not judge human customs so quickly. Her own people value age. The oldest among them hold the most knowledge. Vexthar waved his hand dismissively. He said her people were different. They live for 300 years. These humans barely reach 100. Half their life is spent becoming useless. He turned back to Bora. He would make them an offer, he said. A generous offer. Bora waited. She had a bad feeling about what was coming. Vexthar told them to reduce their elderly population by 50%. Do this within 1 year, he said. Show the Council that humans are serious about efficiency. Show them that humans can make hard choices. Then they will consider the application. The words hit Bora like a physical blow. She asked if he wanted them to kill their elderly. Vexthar replied smoothly that he did not say kill. Perhaps relocate them. Perhaps stop providing medicine. Perhaps encourage them to volunteer for the good of their species. He did not care how they did it. Just do it, he said. Bora said this was insane. Her voice was shaking now. They would never do that. Vexthar shrugged. Then they would never join the Council, he said. The choice was simple. Adapt or remain isolated forever. They had been given a path. Take it or leave it. Bora looked at the other humans with her. They all looked shocked and angry. She turned back to the Council and said she needed to speak with her government. Vexthar said of course she did. They had 1 month to respond. After that, the Council would consider Earth's application permanently rejected. He stood up and declared the meeting over. The journey back to Earth felt long. Bora sat in the pilot's seat of their small ship, staring at the stars. Behind her, the other delegates talked in quiet, angry voices. When they reached Earth, news of the Council's demand spread fast. It was on every screen, every radio, every phone. People were furious. Protests filled the streets. Politicians gave angry speeches. But everyone knew the truth. Earth was alone in the galaxy. The council had all the power. In a small apartment in the city of Busan, an old man watched the news. His name was Kang Daeho. He was 72 years old. His hair was white and his hands shook slightly when he held his teacup. But his eyes were sharp and clear. 4 other old people sat with him. They met every week to play cards and share stories. Today they were not playing cards. One woman asked if everyone heard what the council said about them. Her name was Park Mina. She was 68 and had been a scientist. They called them useless, she said. Another man said the council called them worse than that. His name was Yoon Ha-jin. He was 75 and walked with a cane. They said the elderly should die. Daeho set down his teacup carefully. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. They have made a mistake, he said. Mina asked what kind of mistake. Daeho looked at each of his friends. They had all served in the military together many years ago. They had fought in wars. They had seen things that young people could not imagine. They had survived when others had not. Daeho explained that the council thinks they are weak because they are old. They think age makes them useless. They have forgotten something important. Ha-jin asked what that was. Daeho smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something others did not. He said they did not get old by being weak. They got old by being strong, by surviving, by fighting, by winning. He stood up slowly. The council wants to see what old humans can do. He said it was time they reminded them. Mina nodded slowly. He was thinking of the old network, she said. The veterans, Daeho said yes. They need to make some calls. Reach out to old friends. People they served with. People who remember how to fight. Another man spoke. His name was Nam Soo-jin. He had been an engineer. He said the government would not like this. Daeho agreed. The government will try to negotiate. They will try to find a peaceful solution, and they should. But they need to be ready for when peace fails. He looked out the window at the city below. Because it will fail, he said. Bullies do not respect weakness. They only respect strength. That night, Daeho made his first call. Then another. Then another. Across Earth, old phones rang. Old computers turned on. Old people read messages they had not expected to see again. The message was simple. The young need us. Are you ready? The answers came back just as simple. Yes. In the Galactic Council chamber, Vexthar was pleased with himself. He had put the humans in their place. They would either obey or be left behind. Either way, they would learn their lesson. He did not know that he had just made the biggest mistake of his very long life. He had insulted people who had nothing left to lose. He had threatened people who had fought and survived and won for 70 years. He had made old people angry. And old people, the smart ones knew, were the most dangerous people of all. Because they had already lived their lives. They had already raised their children. They had already made their peace with death, which meant they had nothing to fear. And people with nothing to fear were capable of anything. The storm was coming. Vexthar just did not know it yet. 2 weeks had passed since the Council's demand. Earth's government was in chaos. Every day they held meetings. Every day they argued about what to do. Some wanted to negotiate. Others wanted to refuse completely. No one had a good answer. But while the politicians talked, something else was happening. Something they did not know about yet. In cities around the world, old veterans were meeting. They gathered in small groups in quiet places. Coffee shops, living rooms, community centers. They spoke in low voices and made careful plans. Admiral Kang Daeho had been busy. His apartment had become a command center. Old computers hummed on every table. Maps covered the walls. His friends worked day and night. Dr. Park Mina sat at one computer typing rapidly. She was contacting old colleagues from her days in weapons research. Many of them had retired. Many had been forgotten. But they all remembered how to build things that could change battles. Colonel Yoon Ha-jin worked on tactics. Despite his cane, his mind was still sharp. He studied every report about the Galactic Council's military. He found their patterns, their weaknesses, their mistakes. Nam Soo-jin had a different job. She was talking to people at the old military shipyards, ships that everyone thought were scrapped, ships that had been decommissioned decades ago. But Soo-jin knew the truth. Many of those ships were still there, hidden away, and some of them could still fly. Daeho looked at his team. They were all old. They all had gray hair. Some walked with canes, some took medicine every day, some got tired easily, but their eyes burned with determination. One morning there was a knock at the door. Deho opened it carefully. A younger woman stood there in military uniform. It was Commander Lee Bora. She looked at him with hard eyes. She asked if she could come in. Deho stepped aside. Bora walked through the apartment looking at everything. The computers, the maps, the plans. When she turned back to Deho, her face was angry. She said she knew what they were doing. Mobilizing veterans, preparing for war. This was against government orders. The government was trying to find a peaceful solution. Deho listened quietly. When she finished, he asked her to sit down. She refused. He asked if she remembered his name. She said of course she did. He was Admiral Kang Deho, retired. Deho shook his head. He asked if she knew who her father was. She looked confused. Her father had died in service 20 years ago. Everyone knew that. Deho walked to a shelf and picked up an old photograph. He showed it to her. In the picture, two young soldiers stood together smiling. One was Deho, the other was her father. He told her they served together for 10 years. Her father saved his life twice. Deho was there when her father died? He died protecting a civilian transport from pirates. He died so others could live. Bora's anger faded. She stared at the photograph. Deho asked her what she thought her father would say about the council's demand. Would he negotiate with people who wanted to kill the elderly? Would he bow to bullies? Bora did not answer. She could not. Deho said they were not trying to start a war. They were preparing for the war that was already coming. The council had made their intentions clear. They did not respect humans. They would not negotiate in good faith. And when diplomacy failed, someone needed to be ready. Bora sat down slowly. She asked why the veterans did not trust the government to handle this. Deho smiled sadly. He said they did trust the government. But the government had to try peace first. That was their job. The veterans' job was different. Their job was to be ready when peace failed. He looked at her directly. He asked if she came to arrest them. She had the authority. They were acting without orders. Bora was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said she did not come to arrest anyone. She came to understand. And now she did. She stood up to leave. At the door, she turned back. She asked what they needed. What could she do to help? Deho told her to keep doing her job. Work with the government. Try for peace. But when the time came, be ready to choose. Her father always chose to protect people, whatever the cost. After she left, Mina asked if they could trust her. Deho said yes. She was her father's daughter. The deadline was getting closer. The council sent more messages. Each one was more threatening than the last. High Counselor Vexthar appeared on Earth's communication channels again. This time, his message was broadcast to everyone. Every human could see it. He showed images of elderly humans. People in hospitals. People in care homes. People walking slowly with canes. He called them parasites. He said they drain resources that could go to the young. He said no advanced species would tolerate such waste. The broadcast ended with a threat. If Earth did not comply, the Council would impose economic sanctions. They would blockade the solar system. They would cut Earth off from the galaxy completely. Young people across Earth watched the broadcast. One of them was Captain Choi Minwoo. He was 38 years old and one of the military's best pilots. He had always thought of himself as a professional. He followed orders. He trusted the chain of command. But watching Vexithar mock elderly humans made something change inside him. He thought about his own grandmother. She was 85. She had raised him when his parents died. She taught him everything important. Was she a parasite? Was she waste? Minwoo made a decision. He started asking questions. Quietly, carefully, he talked to other pilots, other officers. Many of them felt the same way he did. Someone told him about the veterans, about what they were doing. Minwoo found his way to Deho's apartment. When Deho opened the door and saw the young captain, he smiled. He said he had been expecting someone like Minwoo to show up eventually. Minwoo asked what they were planning. Deho told him the truth. All of it. They had restored 37 ships from the old fleet. Dr. Mina had rebuilt quantum disruption weapons from classified files. Colonel Hajin had created tactical plans for asymmetric warfare against the Council. They had recruited over 5,000 veterans willing to crew the ships, but they needed something. They needed young pilots. Veterans could command ships and plan battles, but flying modern fighters required fast reflexes, young eyes, quick hands. Daeho asked if Minwoo would be willing to fly for them. If war came, Minwoo said yes without hesitation. In the following days, more young officers came. Not many. Most still trusted the government to solve this peacefully. But enough came. Enough to make a difference. Dr. Mina showed them her weapons. The quantum disruptors could interfere with alien shield technology. They would not destroy ships, but they would make them vulnerable. It was an old design, created decades ago but never used. The council did not know it existed. Colonel Hajin taught them tactics. He showed them how to fight when outnumbered, how to use terrain, how to strike and fade, how to make the enemy chase shadows while you hit them from unexpected angles. Engineer Sujin took them to the hidden shipyards. The young officers could not believe what they saw. Dozens of ships that should not exist. Ships from 30 years ago, carefully maintained, ready to fly. The ships were not as fast as modern ones. Their weapons were older. But they worked, and there were so many of them. Minwoo asked why the government did not know about these ships. Sujin explained that a few people always knew. A small group of veterans who kept the secret. They maintained the ships in case Earth ever needed them. That time had come. The deadline was 3 days away now. The government prepared its official response. They would refuse the council's demand. They would try to negotiate different terms. They hoped the council would be reasonable. Daeho and his veterans hoped for peace too, but they did not expect it. On the last night before the deadline, Daeho gathered his team. They sat in his apartment drinking tea. They did not talk about war or weapons. They talked about their lives, their families, their memories. Mina talked about her grandchildren. She had 6. She would fight so they could grow up free. Hajin talked about his late wife. She had been a teacher. She believed in preparing for the worst while hoping for the best. He was honoring her memory. Sujin talked about her years in the shipyards. She had built things her whole life. Now she would use those things to protect what she built. Daeho talked about his son, the one who died in service. He said his son believed that every generation had a duty. The duty to leave the world better than they found it. To protect those who came after. The veterans knew they might die. Most of them probably would. But they were ready. They had lived full lives. They had loved and been loved. They had raised families. They had made their mark. Now it was time for one last mission. The most important one. The next day, Earth's government sent their response to the council. They refused the demand. They offered alternative solutions. They asked for understanding and compromise. The council's response came within hours. Vexthar appeared on all channels again. His face was cold. He said Earth had made its choice. The council would now make theirs. A blockade fleet was being assembled. It would arrive at Earth's solar system within 1 week. Until then, all trade with Earth would cease. All diplomatic contact would end. Earth was alone. And if Earth did not reconsider, the fleet would enforce the council's will. In her office, Commander Bora received her orders. Arrest the veteran leaders. Stop any unauthorized military activity. Maintain order. She read the orders 3 times. Then she deleted them from her computer. She put on her coat and walked out. The Council's blockade fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. It was massive. Over 200 ships of various sizes, cruisers, destroyers, fighter carriers. They positioned themselves between Earth and the rest of the galaxy. Admiral Thekmore commanded the fleet. He was a military veteran of the Council, with campaigns across dozens of worlds. He had never lost a battle. He did not expect to lose this one either. Thekmore sent a message to Earth. It was simple. The Council had given them a chance. Earth refused. Now they would face consequences. Surrender or be destroyed. Earth's government scrambled. They tried to send diplomats. The Council refused to speak with them. They tried to negotiate. No one answered. They tried to buy time. There was no more time. Commander Bora sat in a military command center. Around her, young officers looked frightened. Earth's official fleet was small. Maybe 50 ships. Many were old. They were no match for the Council's armada. A general asked what they should do. Surrender seemed like the only option. They could not win this fight. Before anyone could answer, an alarm sounded. Something was appearing on their sensors. Ships. Lots of ships. But not from the Council fleet. The ships were coming from Earth itself. From the hidden shipyards. From orbital stations that everyone thought were abandoned. They rose from the surface. They uncloaked from behind the moon. 37 ships. Old military vessels. Each one crewed by veterans who thought they would never see combat again. And at the front of this unexpected fleet was a single flagship. Its name was painted on the hull in large letters. The name was Phoenix. On the bridge of the Phoenix, Admiral Kang Daeho sat in the captain's chair. Around him, his crew worked efficiently. Most of them had gray hair. Many wore reading glasses. One man had an oxygen tank beside his station. But their hands were steady and their eyes were focused. Daeho opened a communication channel. Not just to Earth, to everyone. The Council fleet. Earth's government. Every human settlement in the solar system. His face appeared on billions of screens. He began to speak. His voice was calm and clear. He said his name was Kang Daeho. He was 72 years old. He had served in Earth's military for 45 years. He had fought in 3 wars. He had commanded fleets. He had lost friends. He had buried his own son. He said he represented the old people of Earth, the ones the Galactic Council called useless, the ones they wanted to eliminate, the ones they thought were weak. Daeho explained what the Council did not understand. Old people had lived their lives. They had raised their children. They had made their contributions. They had earned their rest. But when someone threatens their grandchildren, rest becomes impossible. When bullies demand surrender, pride awakens. When tyrants issue ultimatums, old warriors remember who they used to be. He said he had 6 grandchildren. Beautiful, smart, hopeful young people with their whole lives ahead of them. He would die before he let them grow up in a galaxy ruled by fear and cruelty. Then Daeho looked directly into the camera. Directly at the Council fleet. Directly at High Counselor Vexthar watching from his distant throne. Daeho said that Vexthar had asked a question.
He had asked what old humans could do in a war.
He had mocked them. He had dismissed them. Now Daeho would answer that question. The words that came next would be remembered forever. They would be taught in schools. They would be carved into monuments. They would become the rallying cry of a species that refused to bow. Daeho said simply, "War? You'll get war." The veteran fleet decloaked fully. Every ship became visible on Council sensors. The human fleet had just doubled in size. Admiral Thekmore saw the new ships. He laughed. These were ancient vessels, outdated, slow, crewed by old people who should be in retirement homes. He ordered his fleet to attack. Show these primitives what real military power looked like. The Council ships moved forward. Their shields were up. Their weapons were charged. They had overwhelming numerical superiority. This would be over quickly. Then Dr. Park Mina activated her weapons. From the human ships, invisible pulses of energy spread out. Quantum disruption waves. They passed through Council shields like they were not there. The shields did not break. They did not explode. They simply stopped working. Across the entire Council fleet, shield systems went offline. Alarm sirens wailed. Engineers scrambled to fix the problem. But they could not fix what they did not understand. Admiral Thekmore stopped laughing. The human fleet moved. Not in the patterns Thekmore expected. Not in standard formations. They moved in ways that made no tactical sense. They split into small groups. They scattered. It looked like chaos, but it was not. Colonel Yunhagen had planned every move. He knew the Council relied on superior technology and numbers. They fought by overwhelming their enemies with force. They had never learned to adapt, but humans had fought each other for thousands of years. They knew every trick, every tactic, every way to win when outmatched. The human ships hit and ran. They attacked from unexpected angles. They used the asteroid belt for cover. They targeted weapon systems, not hulls. They disabled rather than destroyed, creating chaos in the Council formations. Captain Choi Minwoo flew his fighter alongside a 70-year-old pilot named Kim. Kim had flown in wars before Minwoo was born. His reflexes were slower now, but he knew things. He knew how ships moved, how captains thought, where they would go before they went there. Kim told Minwoo where to fly. Minwoo's young hands executed the moves perfectly. Together they were unstoppable. Engineer Nam Soo-jin pushed her ship's engines harder than they were designed to go. The engine complained. Warning lights flashed. She ignored them all. She knew exactly how far she could push before things broke. She had built these engines herself 40 years ago. The battle raged for hours. The Council had more ships, better weapons, newer technology, but they were fighting an enemy that would not break. An enemy that had already lived full lives. An enemy with nothing to fear. Across the galaxy, other species watched the battle. News traveled fast. The humans, those primitive weaklings, were holding their own against the Council's fleet. Ambassador Kilnara watched from the Council chamber. She had warned them. She had told them not to underestimate humans. No one had listened. Now they were paying the price. As the battle continued, the Council started losing ships. Not many at first, but enough. Their formations broke down. Their commanders became confused. They had never faced an enemy like this. Commander Bora watched from Earth's command center. She had tears in her eyes. The veterans were doing it. They were actually doing it. Against impossible odds, they were winning, not without cost. 3 human ships had been destroyed. Good people died in those ships, veterans who would never see their families again. But their sacrifice meant something. It bought time. It showed strength. Admiral Deho stood on his bridge watching the tactical display. A young officer beside him, barely 25, asked how he stayed so calm. Deho said it was simple. He had already lived the life he wanted. He had loved. He had family. He had served his world. Death held no fear for him anymore. The only thing that mattered was protecting the next generation. The young officer understood. This was not about winning or losing. This was about sending a message. You do not threaten humanity's families. You do not mock those who sacrificed for peace. You do not underestimate people just because they are old. After 12 hours of battle, Admiral Thekmore made a decision. He ordered his fleet to pull back. Not retreat, just regroup. They would return with better plans, better tactics. As the Council fleet withdrew, the human fleet did not pursue. They had made their point. They had shown that Earth would not surrender, would not bow, would not abandon their values no matter the cost. Deho opened communications again. This time, only to his fellow humans. He told them this was just the beginning. The Council would be back. The war was not over, but today they had won something more important than a battle. They had won their dignity. They had shown the galaxy who humans really were. In homes across Earth, old people watched the news. They watched their friends, their fellow veterans, defending humanity. Many had tears in their eyes. They were proud. They were grateful. And they were ready, because the message was clear now.
Old people were not useless.
They were not waste. They were the guardians, the protectors, the ones who remembered what was worth fighting for. High Counselor Vexthar sat in his chamber watching reports of the battle. His 6 eyes were wide with shock. How had this happened? How had primitive humans stopped his fleet? He did not understand. He probably never would. He had spent his life believing that efficiency was everything, that the strong ruled, that age was weakness. He had never learned the most important lesson, that experience matters, that wisdom has value, that people who have already lived their lives are the most dangerous enemies of all, because they have nothing left to lose. The war had begun, and it would not end quickly. The first battle had been just the beginning. The Council sent more ships, more weapons, more soldiers. They were determined to crush Earth's resistance and show the galaxy that rebellion would not be tolerated. But Earth did not break. The veterans fought with tactics the Council could not predict. They struck supply lines. They hit bases in distant systems. They made the Council chase them across space while avoiding major battles they could not win. Colonel Yoon Hajin called it guerrilla warfare. Fight when you have the advantage. Hide when you do not. Make every enemy victory costly. Make them pay for every light year of space. The young officers learned quickly. Captain Minwoo led raids that destroyed Council supply depots. Commander Bora coordinated defensive positions around Earth. Together, old and young, they became a force the galaxy had never seen. But war always has a cost. In a battle near Jupiter's moons, engineer Nam Soo-jin's ship took heavy damage. The reactor was failing. Radiation leaked into the hull. Soo-jin ordered her crew to evacuate. Young engineers begged her to leave with them. The ship was lost. There was no point staying, Soo-jin refused. If the reactor exploded now, it would take 3 other ships with it. Ships full of young crew members. She could hold it together long enough for them to get clear. But not if she left her post, the young engineers escaped. Sujin stayed at her station, her hands moving across controls, balancing systems that should have failed minutes ago. She thought about her 6 grandchildren. She would not see them grow up. But they would grow up. That was enough. The other ships got clear. Sujin allowed herself a small smile. Then the reactor exploded. Admiral Deho attended the memorial service. So did 300 other veterans. So did the young crew that Sujin had saved. There were no bodies to bury. There never were in space battles. But they remembered her. They honored her sacrifice. Deho spoke at the service. He said Sujin had been a builder her whole life. She built engines. She built ships. In her final act, she built a future for others. That was the greatest thing anyone could build. Sujin was not the only one. Every week brought more losses. Good people. Brave people. Veterans who had already given so much, now giving everything. But something strange was happening across the galaxy. Other species watched the war. They watched old humans fight impossible odds. They watched the Council try again and again to crush Earth's spirit and fail every time. Some species started to question the Council. Why were they doing this? What threat did Earth really pose? Was it right to demand that a species kill their own elderly? Ambassador Kilnara spoke before the full Council. She asked these questions publicly. She said the war was wrong. Earth had done nothing except refuse an immoral demand. The Council was the aggressor here. High Counselor Vexthar tried to silence her. But others joined her voice. 3 species withdrew from Council military operations. 2 more offered secret support to Earth, providing intelligence about Council fleet movements. The war was becoming political as well as military. The Council was losing support. Vexthar was losing control. In her command center, Dr. Park Mina worked on a new weapon. Her quantum disruptors had changed the war. Now she had a bigger idea. A weapon that could disable communications across an entire sector of space. It would work. She was certain. But there was a problem. The weapon required someone to be at the center of the disruption field. They would not survive the activation. Mina studied the calculations for weeks. She looked for another way. There was none. She told Deho about the weapon, about what it could do, about what it would cost. Deho asked if it would win the war. Mina said no. But it would cripple the Council's command structure. It would give Earth the advantage they needed. It could save thousands of lives. Deho asked who would activate it. Mina said she would. It was her design. Her responsibility. She was 68 years old. She had lived a good life. Her husband was dead. Her children were grown. Her grandchildren would understand. Before she left on her mission, Mina recorded a message for her family. She sat in front of a camera, choosing her words carefully. She told her grandchildren that she loved them. She said she was sorry she would not see them grow up. But she wanted them to understand something important. Every generation has a duty, she said. The duty to leave the world better than they found it. Sometimes that duty requires sacrifice. She was making her sacrifice so they could live in a galaxy where people were valued for who they are, not just how useful they are. She told them to be kind, to be brave, to honor the old and protect the young, to never let anyone tell them that some lives matter more than others. Then she smiled and said goodbye. The mission launched 3 days later. Mina's small ship carried the quantum disruption weapon. She flew deep into Council-controlled space, accompanied by 12 fighters for protection. Captain Minwoo led the fighter escort. They reached the target zone without being detected. Admiral Thekmore's command fleet was assembling there. Over 100 ships preparing for a major assault on Earth. Mina activated the weapon. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across 3 sectors of space, every communication system failed. Council ships could not talk to each other, could not coordinate, could not receive orders. Their entire command structure collapsed in seconds. At the center of the disruption field, Mina's ship exploded in a flash of light. The fighter escort had already fled as planned. They carried the news back to Earth. The mission was successful. Dr. Park Mina was gone. With their communications disabled, Admiral Thekmore's fleet was vulnerable. Human forces struck hard and fast. They destroyed command ships. They scattered the fleet. It was the biggest victory of the war. But Deho did not celebrate. He stood on his bridge looking at Mina's photograph. Another friend gone. Another life given to protect the next generation. Commander Bora found him there hours later. She asked if he was all right. Deho said he was counting all the veterans who had died in this war. Counting all the friends he had lost. The number kept growing. Bora said their sacrifice was not in vain. They were winning. The council was weakening. Deho nodded. But winning meant nothing if they lost who they were in the process. They had to remember why they fought, not for victory, for values, for the right to protect their families, for the principle that all people have worth. He looked at Bora. He said one day when she was old, someone might try to tell her she was useless, that she was a burden, that the young should not waste resources on her. When that day came, he said she should remember this war. Remember that old people fought for her freedom. Remember that age is not weakness. Remember that every generation owes a debt to the one before. Bora promised she would remember. High Counselor Vexithar watched his empire crumble. Species were leaving the council. His military was in chaos. His advisors were abandoning him. He could not understand how this happened. How had primitive humans done this? How had old people defeated his mighty fleets? Ambassador Kilnara came to his chamber. She told him the truth he refused to see. He had lost because he never understood what he was fighting. He thought he was fighting old, weak primitives. But he was actually fighting people who had nothing to lose and everything to protect. Vexthar screamed at her to leave. She did, but her words stayed with him. In desperation, Vexthar made one final decision. He would lead the fleet himself. He would take every remaining ship. He would go to Earth and end this war personally. He assembled the largest armada he could gather, over 300 ships. He took personal command, and he set course for Earth. Intelligence reports reached Earth quickly. The final battle was coming. Admiral Deho called a meeting of all commanders. Veterans and young officers gathered on the Phoenix. They looked at the tactical display. The council fleet was overwhelming. Someone asked if they could win. Deho said honestly that he did not know. The odds were against them. Many would die, maybe all of them. But they had something the council did not. They had a reason to fight. They were protecting their home, their families, their future, and they would fight with everything they had. Colonel Yoon Hajin spoke up. He said he was 75 years old. He had seen many battles. He knew this would be his last. And he was ready. Around the room, other veterans nodded. They were ready too. Captain Minwoo stood beside a 70-year-old pilot. The old man had taught him everything. How to fly, how to fight, how to be brave when scared. Minwoo said the young would fight beside the old, together, until the end. Deho felt pride swell in his chest. This was what the council never understood. Humans fought best when fighting for each other. When generations stood together. When the old protected the young and the young honored the old, he told his people to prepare. The final battle was coming, and they would show the galaxy what humanity truly meant. People gathered in their homes. Families held each other close. They watched the stars knowing that tomorrow everything would change. Either Earth would survive, or it would fall. On the Phoenix, Admiral Kang Deho walked through the ship. He visited every section, every crew member. He shook hands. He thanked them. He looked into their eyes and saw courage. In the fighter bay, Captain Minwoo prepared his ship. Beside him, an old pilot named Kim did the same. Kim was 73. His hands shook slightly as he checked his controls. But his eyes were clear. Minwoo asked if Kim was scared. Kim smiled. He said he had been scared in every battle he ever fought. Fear was normal. What mattered was flying anyway. Commander Bora stood in the command center coordinating with Earth's defense forces. Young officers worked around her. They looked nervous. She told them to trust their training. Trust the veterans. Trust each other. Colonel Yoon Hajin sat in his quarters writing letters. Letters to family, to friends, to people he might never see again. His cane leaned against the wall. He would not need it tomorrow. Tomorrow he would be in a command chair, leading battles, doing what he was born to do. Deho returned to his bridge as dawn broke over Earth. The council fleet appeared on sensors, 300 ships, all of them heading straight for Earth. At the center of the council formation was High Counselor Vexithar's personal flagship. It was massive, 3 times larger than any other ship in his fleet. Covered in weapons, protected by the strongest shields the council could build, Vexthar broadcast a message. This was Earth's last chance to surrender, comply with the original demand, reduce the elderly population, join the council, or be destroyed. Deho did not respond with words. He responded with action. The human fleet moved to intercept. The battle began. It was brutal from the first moment. The council fleet came in hard, trying to overwhelm human forces with sheer numbers. But the humans scattered, using every tactic they had learned in 6 months of war. Colonel Hodgen directed a flanking maneuver that split the council fleet in 2. Half pursued the flanking force. Half stayed to protect Vexthar. The formation broke. The advantage of numbers became chaos. Minwoo and Kim flew together, their fighters dancing between capital ships. Kim told Minwoo where to go. Minwoo's young reflexes executed perfectly. They destroyed weapon systems on ship after ship. Other veterans did the same. Ships commanded by people in their 60s and 70s outmaneuvered enemies who underestimated them. Every tactic, every lesson learned in decades of service. All of it came into play, but the cost was high. Human ships exploded. Brave people died. Veterans who had given everything now gave their lives. Colonel Hodgen's ship took a direct hit. The bridge was breached. Hodgen sealed the emergency door, trapping himself inside with failing life support. But he kept commanding the battle from his dying ship until the very end. His last order was to protect the young pilots at all costs. Deho watched Hodgen's ship go dark. Another friend gone, another sacrifice. He forced himself to keep fighting. He could mourn later. If there was a later, the battle raged for hours. The council fleet slowly lost ships, but so did Earth. The math was simple and terrible. Earth would run out of ships before the council did. Deho made a decision. A desperate decision. He would take the Phoenix straight at Vexthar's flagship. If the council's leader fell, the battle might end. He gave the order. The Phoenix turned and accelerated. Directly at the heart of the council fleet, council ships moved to intercept. The Phoenix took hit after hit. Shields failed. Hull breaches opened. Fire spread through sections of the ship. But the Phoenix kept going. The crew worked frantically to keep systems running. Veterans at their posts doing jobs they had done for decades, holding their ship together through sheer determination. They reached Vexthar's flagship. Deho ordered all remaining power to the main weapon. 1 shot. That was all they had left. The shot struck true. It pierced Vexthar's shields, tore through armor, penetrated deep into the flagship. On the bridge of his dying ship, High Counselor Vexthar finally understood. These humans were not weak. They were not primitive. They had something he could never comprehend. They had purpose beyond themselves. They fought not for glory or power, but for love, for family, for the right to protect what mattered. Vexithar's flagship exploded in a massive fireball. The Phoenix was crippled, drifting, powerless. Deho's bridge was damaged. Emergency lights flickered. But he was alive. His crew was alive. With their leader dead, the council fleet hesitated. Some ships retreated immediately. Others continued fighting. But the coordination was gone. The will to fight was fading. Commander Bora took command of the remaining human forces. She pressed the advantage. She gave the council fleet one chance to withdraw peacefully. If they left now, no more blood would be shed. The council ships retreated. The battle was over. Earth had won. But the victory was bittersweet. Half of the veteran fleet was destroyed. Thousands of old warriors had died. Colonel Hodgen, Engineer Sujin, Dr. Mina, so many others. They had given everything. Rescue ships searched the debris field. They found survivors, not many. But some Deho was pulled from the Phoenix. He was injured but alive. As they carried him to the medical ship, he asked about casualties. The numbers made him weep. 3 months later, the Galactic Council reformed. Ambassador Kilnara led the new council. The first thing they did was apologize to Earth. They invited Earth to join as a full member, with no conditions, no demands, just respect. Commander Lee Bora became Earth's first representative to the new council. She spoke before the assembly. She told them about the war, about the veterans who fought, about the sacrifices they made. She explained that humans valued their elderly because age brought wisdom. Experience, perspective. The old had already lived. They understood what truly mattered. And when threatened, they would fight harder than anyone because they had nothing to prove and everything to protect. The new council listened. They learned, and they changed their laws. No species would ever again be asked to harm their own people. On Earth, a memorial was built, a huge wall with names carved into black stone. Every veteran who died in the war was listed. Thousands of names, thousands of lives given for the freedom of others. Admiral Kang Dae-ho attended the dedication ceremony. He was 73 now. He walked with a cane, his body finally giving in to age and injury. But he stood straight as he read the names aloud. Colonel Yoon Ha-jin, Engineer Nam Soo-jin, Dr. Park Mina, name after name, friend after friend. When he finished, he spoke to the crowd. He told them to remember these people. Remember what they fought for. Remember that age is not weakness. That experience matters, that every person has value regardless of how old they are. He said that one day everyone in the crowd would be old, and when that day came, they should remember this memorial. Remember that their elders fought for them, and they should fight for the next generation in turn. That was the cycle, he said. The old protect the young grow old. They protect the next generation. On and on, forever. Captain Minwoo stood in the crowd, now a commander himself. Beside him was old pilot Kim, still alive, still flying. They had survived together. They would teach the next generation together. Across Earth, in schools and homes, the story spread. Children learned about the war, about the veterans who saved humanity, about the admiral who spoke 5 words that changed the galaxy. War? You'll get war. Those words became a promise, a warning, a reminder. Never underestimate humans. Never mock those who have lived long lives. Never threaten families, because the old will rise to protect the young, and they will fight with everything they have learned, everything they have become, everything they are. Years later, Dae-ho sat in his apartment in Busan, the same apartment where it all began. He was 80 now. His friends were gone, but their memory lived on. His grandchildren visited often. They asked him about the war. He told them stories about bravery, about sacrifice, about friendship, about duty, but mostly he told them about love, because that was what it all came down to. The veterans did not fight because they hated the council. They fought because they loved their families. They loved their world. They loved the future even though they might not live to see it. One of his grandchildren, a young girl of 10, asked if he would do it again. If he knew how many would die, would he still fight? Dae-ho thought for a long moment. Then he said yes, because the alternative was unthinkable. To let bullies win, to teach the next generation that might makes right, to show the galaxy that humans could be pushed around. No, he said, they had to fight. They had to win, not for themselves, for her, for all the children like her who deserved to grow up free. The little girl hugged him. She said when she grew old she would protect her grandchildren too. Dae-ho smiled. That was exactly right, he said. That was how it should be. He looked out his window at the city below, at the stars above, at the future his generation had fought to preserve. It had cost them everything. But it was worth it because the young were safe. The galaxy had learned respect, and humanity had proven something important. That old people were not weak. They were not useless. They were not a burden. They were warriors, teachers, protectors, guardians of wisdom and courage. And when you threatened what they loved, they would show you exactly what 70 years of life could create.